What was the most petty thing an adult did to you when you were younger? In Cub Scouts. We were doing the Pinewood Derby. I worked really hard on my car. My dad helped. Of course. I had already won the first 3 rounds. And before the final round, one of the dads of the other kids picked up my car to hand it to me. It slipped out of his hand and broke the wheels when it hit the floor. I'm convinced it was not an accident, and he was sabotaging my car so his kid would win. This was over 30 years ago, and I'm still salty about it. I was feeling sick one day in grade 3 or 4 and the substitute teacher wouldn't let me go to the nurse's office because I didn't look sick enough. Double quote. I had strep throat. I once got yelled at by the nurse for bleeding through my band-aid too fast. Like I did it on purpose. Edit till a lot of people who are school nurses should absolutely not be school nurses. I was in middle school at a friend's sleepover. Her parents were very strict. Her siblings got pulled out of public school to go to a Catholic school, were homeschooled in high school, and they scared the hell out of me. Anyway, it was probably like 11 PM at this sleepover, and her mom hesitantly let us watch the Disney movie Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century. I laughed at her part, and even though her parents were awake, they came into the living room to scold me for being too loud. Not long after, I took a drink of water, got a little strangled, and started coughing. They called my parents after 11 PM to come pick me up because I couldn't behave. They had no regard for them being asleep and having jobs to get to early in the morning. They wanted me out for laughing and coughing in the span of about 10 minutes. My parents never let me stay the night at her house again, and are still pissed at them for doing that almost 20 years later. I was at an Easter egg hunt when I was around 6. It was in a big park area with lots of rocks. I saw a little chocolate egg foil glisten and ran over to pick it up. As I reached my hand out to pick it up, a man trod on my hand to stop me getting it. Then he called his kid over to find it. I have a similar story. I was about 12 and at a Madrid Gras parade and an adult stepped on my hand to prevent me from picking up some plastic beads on the ground. When I was like 9 or 10, I was rollerblading home from my mom's work. Right? And I'm heading down 4th Street. And I find something like $16 on the ground, a 10, a 5, and single, just laying there on the sidewalk next to some outdoor seating at a cafe. Being the obnoxiously nice kid that I was, I pick it up and kind of look around, wondering if anybody lost their money. That's when the lady in the weird sweater vest comes around the corner. We make eye contact and I tell her I found this money. And she goes, "Huh, let me see it." And my naive ass is like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. She's a grown up. She can sort this out." Double quote. She looks around, hands me the single back, puts her finger to her mouth in a SHHH gesture. Then she just fucks off, never to be seen again. My mom asked if I wanted to play 52 card pickup while my friends were over. I asked her what it was and she said I either want to play or I don't. I told her I didn't want to play anything if I didn't know what it was. She got visibly irritated and threw the cards on the ground and said, "This is 52 card pickup. Pick them up." She then threatened to ground me as she watched me pick the cards up and put them away nicely. I think it was worse because my friends were watching. When I was in like 5th grade, I didn't put a book cover on my math book. It required cutting up a paper bag, something similar. We couldn't really afford the fancy ones, and I just never did it. So my math teacher took away my math book. So I couldn't do homework or follow along in class. Like WTF. Who does that to a kid? When my mom found out, she went down to the school and raised hell about interfering with my right to an education or something. The school district was terrified of her until I graduated. We were required to cover our books too, but the teachers who were strict about it made us do it in class. Like literally the day we are handed the book, the teacher got out a big stack of paper bags and we'd spend 10 minutes all making book covers. Grounded me for leaving a hanger on the dryer. Then extended it for reading while grounded. Then further for sleeping when told I can't read. Shti still pisses me off years later. When I was a little kid I made a bad grade on a spelling quiz or something in elementary school and my dad was so upset for some reason that I was instructed to sit on the floor and not touch anything or move for hours until they let me go to bed. In elementary school I used to talk to the lunch lady every day and then the one day I didn't say hi. She came to my lunch table and told me I was fake, phony, and a few other things and stopped speaking to me. I still don't understand what her problem was. You reminded me of my own petty lunch lady. For some reason she took a disliking to me and when we filed into the lunchroom she'd ask everyone who they wanted to sit with. Nice as pie. Until she got to me. She would march me over to wherever my worst bullies were sitting and snap sit down there. Now. She'd also come up to me and say things like you've got nits in your hair, complete lie, in front of the bullies. Or egg them on when they mocked me for having healthy food in my packed lunch instead of chocolate and chips. Joining in with their "that's disgusting, how can you eat that crap?" As if I even had a choice in what my mother packed for me. I was a tiny, shy, quiet little girl with no friends. I used to have nightmares about her. Had a teacher in kindergarten threaten to expel me because I was sick and didn't show up the day before. She put me on the spot in front of the whole class telling me not to lie and that she'd call the principal. I cried in front of the whole class not knowing what to do. Apparently she wanted to win some attendance award and thought confronting a child was a good idea. Like bruh, I was fking 5. Still salty on how she got away with it. My aunt was unpleasant or weird with everyone but always particularly cold to me. One day when I was about 14 she took me aside and said she'd held a grudge against me because of my name. She had wanted to call her first daughter that name but my parents had had a child first and used it. They had no idea she wanted the name and aren't the kind of people who would have done it on purpose. She said she'd tried really hard and had just about forgiven me for it. I just remember being baffled by it and then feeling sorry for her for being that spiteful. To be honest. But it pulled later in comparison with all the other crazy horrible things she did to her own family. My swimming teacher promised me a candy bar if I jumped off the board when I couldn't swim and when I did they said they forgot. But I saw them eating one in the lounge. I was 5 and I was betrayed. Another thing that swim teacher did instead of teach me to swim was to try and teach the group how to keep their eyes open underwater and see. We all had goggles and had to take them off to do this. Also I didn't learn to swim there, I ended up learning at a hotel on vacation when my sister taught me like a year later. I got in trouble in 6th grade for reading during homeroom. Homeroom was like a random 30 minutes period to work on homework but I always did my homework the night before so I would just quietly read. For some reason my homeroom teacher hated it. One day she just yelled at me for always reading in her class and told me to do my homework. I told her all of my homework was done. She told me to prove it so I showed her all of my completed homework. Then she confiscated my book and sent me to the principal's office for being disrespectful. I'm still salty about it. My swimming teacher removed my inflatable armbands while swimming in a deep part of the pool because I was not paying enough attention out of excitement. One of my uncles was in a years-long fight with my mom. To stir trouble. Anytime he greeted my sister and I, he would tell my sister how beautiful and wonderful she is and to me just say "oh, you're here too" and then promptly ignore me the rest of the night. I used to adore him up to that point so this ended up in me being extremely hurt and crying to my mom for hours about how I'm ugly and not special. He got his petty vengeance on my mother and crushed my self-esteem. Till today I don't forgive him for it. We were almost out of ice cream. I made myself the last bowl. I came into the living room to eat it and my dad took it and ate it all because I didn't offer him any. I was about 8. I'm 41 and I still hide while eating bowls of ice cream. My dad used to ask me for a sip of my drink and down half a more of it in a go. I was a dumb little shitty so I kept falling for it and he'd keep laughing. I can share anything today except my drinks. Doesn't matter what it is. I won't let anyone have a sip. Except my wife because I love her and trust her and she has a great butt. Preschool me wasn't sure if shaking hands should come after or before getting awarded a prize on stage. Adult snatched my prize out of reach to a hall full of guffawing adults. Preschool me burst out in tears and was led off stage. Parents scolded me for making her look bad. Edit. My form teacher passed the prize to parent later when we were seated. Prize giver was a local celebrity. I wrote a letter to my grandma that died on Christmas Day and put it in her casket at her funeral. My aunt took it out and gave it back to me and told me I couldn't do that. I was 6. Edit. Thank you all for the kind comments and awards. And for everyone who told their stories too. Let's always remember blood doesn't make a family. We make our own with the people we care about and care about us. Nah. My 6th grade teacher didn't like me. I had transferred into her class when the tag teacher was needed elsewhere. And this teacher was resentful. She was going to have the class read The Hobbit, long before any movies. I was excited. I had read it and the trilogy the year before. She called me a liar in front of the whole class. Then went on a tirade about how kids like me were terrible and thought we were better. I was a quiet shy girl. And cried. She mocked that too. The rest of the year was hell. She let her pets, officers' kids. It was a school near a Navy base, bully me. I was never good enough. She couldn't fail me because I excelled at bookwork. But she picked on me at every turn. Trash human. My mother and stepfather allowed me to get my learner's permit at 16. Then at 17 they allowed me to sign up for driver's ed classes. Yet when it came time for road practice, where you drive with an adult in the passenger seat, they absolutely refused to let me drive either of their vehicles. I even told the teacher and she confronted my mother by asking her how she expected me to learn. I got maybe 5 hours of road time thanks to my brother-in-law before I took my road test. It went as well as you might imagine. When I confronted them they screamed at me for wanting my license and said their rates went up enough when I turned 16. I had to wait until I was 18 and schedule extra road lessons with the instructor to get my license. The best part is they lied. 15 years later I sell auto insurance. Unlicensed teenagers don't count on your policy. And licensed ones can be put down as excluded. When I was probably around 8 or so I was at a baseball game with my family. Naturally I was hoping I'd be able to get a ball and one of the players saw me in the stands, looked directly at me and threw a ball to me. Then some guy probably college aged proceeded to reach over my shoulder and snatch the ball before it got to me. I turn around and he and all his friends are laughing and celebrating. Almost 20 years later I'm still a bit salty about it. A teacher in my Catholic grade school was also the mother of one of my classmates. He was kind of a bully. So when I had a birthday party I didn't invite him. She confronted me about it and would go out of her way to make school miserable for me. When my parents brought it up to the administration she denied it. Now, I wasn't actually Catholic. Just went there because it was a nice school. So as an actual member of the parish she was believed over me. I ended up needing to move schools before I got the grade that she taught. When I was 10. An aunt told me to stop eating so much. Or you'll get fat like your parents and sister. I believe that was the first time I've ever wanted to clock someone. P.S. That aunt was 100 pounds heavier than either one of my parents at the time. And is close to 200 pounds heavier now. While both of them have lost 75 plus. The trailer park manager for the neighborhood I grew up in. When I was 7 or so a bunch of friends and I went to one of their houses to play outside. After about 20 minutes of being out there the manager pulled up in her car and told us we couldn't play there because that was someone's yard. Well the parents came out and told her that. Yes. We were all allowed to play in their yard. And that it was fine. That wasn't enough for her because she told us all to go home anyway. And got our parents to take us home when we wouldn't leave. 30-plus-year-old man made it a point to walk up to me and call me by a racial slur when I was about 5-8 years old in front of the crosswalk lady. Nobody said sh*t in response. Ugh. When that hate runs so deep you hate children. Something is so wrong. I was 16 and carrying out groceries for an older guy. He sees this girl with her child that's obviously biracial. That kid should have a shotgun to the head. My heart just dropped along with my jaw. I was so nerdy and anxious I couldn't say anything. Almost 30 years later and it still makes me mad. That man is probably long dead. I hope the baby did well. Not being allowed to have any other food during cookouts other than a lukewarm grilled hot dog. Or an overdone hamburger. Because apparently everything else is grown-up food. Jeez. I'm glad I'm an adult now for small reasons like that. My father-in-law waited until both of my parents passed away to become a dick. Now he talks bad about me to people and smiles in my face. Only reason I know about it is because my niece and nephew pulled me to the side and let me know. I hope and pray for my sake that he never needs to move in with us when he gets older. Cause that shit ain't happening. But, is that petty of me? About 8 years old over at a friend's house. Family was pretty trashy, and friend and I were eating the candy we'd bought and the mom flat out said to me, "You might be skinny now but someday it's going to catch up to you and you'll be super fat just like me." That stuck with me forever. Oof. There was a lot. My mom shoved into me and I asked what was wrong. She said, "If you have to ask, I'm not going to tell you." She could be super petty AMD between 2001 and 2019 really just did not like me at all. 2001 to 2009 was probably the worst. She would burst into my room to yell at me when I was doing homework. She freaked out at me and screamed at me when I was gifted a webcam. That led to her kicking me out of the house. Over a webcam. Yeah. So a month or two after she kicked me out, she bragged about how she bought my brother a laptop with a webcam built in. I questioned her and she just gave me this smug little smile. They also bought my brother a new car at 18. That year for my birthday I got gains. So, yeah. So a month or two after she kicked me out, she bragged about how she bought my brother a laptop with a webcam built in. I questioned her and she just gave me this smug little smile. They also bought my brother a new car at 18. That year for my birthday I got gains. So, I wasn't working hard in my English class at school and still got good grades. It annoyed my English teacher to no end. One day I was called to the principal's office and he was there to complain about me. He said I would never be good at English and that I should be downgraded to easier classes because I would end up failing. The principal asked me what grade I got and I told the truth. I had 89% at the time. I ended up staying where I was with the same teacher. Today I can say I'm not bad at English even though it's my second language. At 16 years old, I had a job at a gas station after school. Did all the grunt work, sweeping cigarettes in the parking lot, emptying trash bins, etc. I'm taking the trash out one day and a grown-ass man in his 40s comes up to me and says something along the lines of, "I make more money in a week than you do in a whole year," and all I could think at the time was, well yeah. I sure hope you do, I'm in high school. Such a petty thing to say to a kid just trying to make a little bit of money after school. Back when I was 17, I moved to Nick with a friend for 3 months to work as an intern. That was my first time living in a dorm full of strangers in a foreign country where I knew the language haphazardly, just started really using what I learned at school. The day I got there, I was sitting in the kitchen with my friend, just joking and our usual gimmicks. Some tenants show up and were introduced to me. A couple from Detroit were also there. I noticed the boyfriend being distant but thought nothing of it and there was no interaction between us whatsoever. A few weeks later the girlfriend came up to me, told me I need to apologize to her boyfriend. I asked why. She said, because I was making fun of him the day I arrived and he held a grudge since then. I was thinking, what the FCK? I was joking with my friends hours before I even saw your fat ass entered. You 30 years old but got hurt by some girls yawking in German and giggling and just automatically made the connection between our laughs and your weight. But shy young me went to apologize anyway and was made to listen to him lecturing me about manners. I was in school and it was Friday. We were doing afternoon arts and crafts. I was a little more colorful personality wise as a kid, so I was chatty. My teacher yelled at me in front of everyone, "You are a real pain on Fridays." Out of nowhere. I was upset and shocked. I remained quiet for the rest of the day. My dad used to make fun of my butt, saying it was fat, and he would call me Fiona the monster from Shrek. I was moving away from home to go to college, and I asked my parents if I could borrow one of their PCs to take with me. The family had 3 and it would just be mum and dad at home after I left. Mum got enraged at the cheek of my asking. She said that she was going to lend me one, but now she won't because I asked. She did, however, find a discarded PC and monitor at the local dump and gave it to me. That of barely ran solitaire, but I made use of the monitor. It always gets me even now. It would have been worse surely if I expected to be lent one out of entitlement rather than asking. Her logic never made sense though, and I'm still untangling all the contradictions and panic I feel every day about everything I say and do.